The Corvallis School Board Business Meeting on March 11th, 2021 is called to order. We do have all members of the board on here for the roll call. So the record shows that they're all in attendance. And the first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance. Please join me if you're willing and able for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all for being here. I want to welcome especially our community members who are watching us live or through the recording on YouTube. I want to point that our live stream includes in the description the agenda meeting link. So you can find the meeting agenda link where you can find the information and documents that we upload to the meeting packets through the school board meeting website. And next item on the agenda is school board member reports. Any reports from school board members? Vince.
I just have a brief mention here. The district is meeting with OSEA, which is the union representing our classified staff. We had a planning meeting this week, and we'll start at the end of April in actual negotiations once we have a little more clarity on the fiscal landscape for schools looking forward. And that's all I have.
Thank you. Any other reports? Lou?
We didn't talk about the NAACP session, right?
I don't think so.
I think that was after. I'm sorry. It's like I'm in the mode and there's dishes behind me. Thanks for your patience, y'all. But I just wanted to say that the session went really well, and it was great to be in community with folk as they were learning more about what school boards do and also like how to engage with us. And so I really encourage community members that want to have future informational sessions like that, other organizations, to reach out to us, because I think it's great for us to be able to go to the community, not just invite you to our meetings. And I think that was a great learning experience for everyone.
Yeah. Thank you. Any other reports? Vince, are you good? So I want to report that the Public Schools Foundation is fundraising from the breakfast, and if I'm not mistaken, it was $100,000 goal was met through that event. So really gratitude to our community members and those who are donating to the Public Schools Foundation. I am privy of the good work and the important work. Some of it we'll hear about the scholarships program, and the partnership that the Schools Foundation and the school district have is exemplary. It's really a role model for other districts. So thank you for our community members for supporting this important work. The other reports I want to mention through my capacity on OSBA, we're working actively on OSBA Caucus of Color. We're working actively on sharing information and updates about legislative action. So there are bills that comes to interest of our caucus members, and we follow them. We share information to them. So I'm really grateful for this work, and I'll be sharing with you some updates, legislative updates that might be pertinent to the school board in Corvallis and to education in general. I encourage you to participate. And with that, I want to mention that I shared an informational invitation to those who might be interested in a bill that increases that includes 16 and 17 years old to be able to vote. And I shared that with our student representatives. And I testified in support of it personally in my personal capacity. But I was really pleased to see Kate Bolts testify in and bring her opinion about the bill. It was phenomenal. I have it recorded, so I'll be happy to share it with the board members as well. I also included Chair Wagner comments afterwards saying, you have a bright future ahead of you. And if you were in my district, I would feel worried. So I would say, for me, I would say the same thing. You have a great, bright future ahead of you. Really, your testimony was strong. And in my personal capacity, I want to say the involvement of our students here in Corvallis school districts is a role model, and expanding their access to votes in school boards is a good step forward. And I was really fortunate to connect Kate with this opportunity. Kate, feel free to comment on that if you want or provide more perspective.
Sure. Well, I personally really enjoyed testifying because I think this is really important. I was glad to have the chance, and I've been working on a separate project about getting more youth involved in government and politics. So I had data at the ready, and I was happy to do it. I was glad it was well received, and I am looking forward to working more on it because I think it's really important legislation.
Wonderful, thank you. And what a great example of real-world learning and civic engagement.
Absolutely.
Next item on the agenda is the superintendent's report.
All right. Well, I just have a couple of things I wanted to highlight from the last couple of weeks. The first one to share with you is that last week was Classified Employee Week. And so we have 414 classified employees in our school district doing everything from serving our students lunches and meals to making sure our schools are safe and clean, getting students back and forth to school, and oftentimes also supporting students individually. So it's an opportunity, again, for us to recognize the work that they do and what an important participation and commitment they make to our kids in our schools. I think that's even more stark and specific this year as we think about making sure our schools are ready for kids to return. It's a really important role that they have played and in preparing us for our students to return to school. So again, as you have a chance to interact with or say thank you to our classified employees, please make sure to find that opportunity to do so for board members and also community members. Also, this is National School Breakfast Week. And so one of the things that we'll be offering tomorrow is a special meal. And we'll be offering a special meal, breakfast meal every once a month as we move through the rest of the school year. It's going to be fruit pizza tomorrow. So it's fruit as well as healthy bread. And then when kids come through tomorrow as well, with partnerships, we'll be doing the Food Hero Grow This program. And so students will also leave with seeds that they can go and plant for spring flowers. So again, that's tomorrow morning as kids come through and collect their meals for the day. Also, I wanted to highlight one of our students, Suraj Kulkarni. Suraj was recognized as Oregon's top high school youth volunteer in the 2021 Prudential Spirit and Community Award Program. As a state honoree, Suraj will receive $2,500 in scholarship, an engraved medallion, and also a virtual celebration where the other 101 state honorees will also be recognized. Based on his number of volunteer hours, he's also qualified for the President's Volunteer Service Award, which recognizes Americans of all ages who volunteer significant amounts of their time in service to the community. A President's Volunteer Service Award certificate and a letter from President Biden will be coming to Suraj's mailbox soon. And again, congratulations to Suraj for his work. One of the areas that I know has been a vital area of volunteerism has been with our Mass Brigade. And so again, thank you, Suraj, for helping to keep us safe and as well as the community. Another area of recognition for community support is the Dolly Parton Imagination Library. It's in partnership with our Early Learning Hub, with our library, with Samaritan, and with the school district. So all students, actually not students, preschool age students, future students of ours, K to 5 can sign up for the program and receive a book a month all the way up to their right before they come to school. And those books are everything from The Little Engine That Could to the last book before kids come back to us or start with us is Look Out Kindergarten, Here I Come. And so if you are a parent or a community member who wants to sign up a preschooler anywhere from birth to 5, please go ahead and go to the Dolly Parton Imagine Library website and sign your child up. And at this point, this started on March 2nd, Read Across America Day, and we already have 340 kids from Corvallis that are signed up for the program. So again, it's an exciting thing to do and a way to really influence and focus on literacy. And then the last update I have for you is around sustainability. The Corvallis School District participates in the Energy Trust of Oregon's Strategic Energy Management Program to reduce our use of electricity and natural gas. Those are our two highest bills in terms of utilities. As a part of the program, we've earned $30,000 in incentives and also reduced energy costs. The most recent incentive was a challenge to all participants to create a video to be used to promote sustainability. Students from our district submitted 3 videos, earning our district $1,000 stipend and also $100 for each of their green teams. And so we wanted to share one of the videos with you tonight from the Sheldon Green team, which is coordinated by Liz Weiland. And with that, I'm going to ask Parker to go ahead and turn on the video.
Welcome to our Green Team Sustainability video. We are going to talk about how you can be sustainable within your home to have a better future.
Tell people you know that they can also help make a change for the better treatment of our environment, because the more people willing to be sustainable, the healthier our earth will become.
One very important thing that you can do for the environment is to educate yourself. It's great to be able to be good for the environment, but the first step of that is to know what to do. Whether that's by book, by podcast, by documentary, by listening to somebody else speak, you need to educate yourself. This way you can also educate others about how to be better for the environment.
Another thing you can do is take some steps to reduce your carbon footprint. This is, if you eat red meat, try eating less of it. Raising cows uses a lot of resources and has a very high carbon footprint. Another thing you can do is try driving less and, if you can, walking or biking more. These are all steps you can take to reduce your carbon footprint.
Hi, I'm Kate. Do you have any ideas on how you could help be more sustainable or help save our planet? You've probably gotten some ideas from some of my fellow teammates, but nothing is so simple than turning off lights when you leave a room. This is the same with TVs and other devices, such as computers, laptops, iPads, tablets, and phones. If you're not engaged in it or if you're not using it, turn it off. Power strips are the same way. If it's not charging something or you're not using it to power another appliance, turn it off. Just don't forget to turn it back on when you need it next. All 3 of these options are helping the environment and helping you save more money. Happy savings!
Another way to be sustainable in your home is to recycle. You can use any type of bin to recycle plastic bottles, glass, or any paper.
One way that you can be more sustainable at home is to save materials to make into something else.
Hi, I'm Carson and I'm from Green Team, and I'd like to thank you for watching our production of how to be sustainable in your own home. I hope you can use this, and thank you for watching.
So in conclusion, as we near Earth Day, it's an opportunity for us to see the work that our students on our green teams and sustainability work that's happening in our district. And also for us to, again, recognize that while we have been in distance learning, we're still finding ways for students to come together and interact with one another and create something across spaces and across the community. So with that, I'll conclude my superintendent's report.
Thank you very much, Ryan. What a wonderful video and great update. Any comments or questions from our board members or students representatives? Wonderful. Thank you. Really, thank you. And thank you to our students who are sharing this video. I learned so many things there. So thanks for sharing it, Sarah.
Sorry, I wasn't fast enough with my hand. Ryan, I just wanted to know how the kindergartners did this week.
Yeah, so it was a great week for us to bring our kinders back. So you know that first week is in phasing, so small groups each day. But one of the things that really stood out to me about the day, because I visited a different school each day, and one of the things that really stood out to me was that oftentimes you see kinders who are tentative and a little nervous about starting school. But what happened was they were able to see people that they know and they've been interacting with, even in this different format, all year long. And so it was almost like a new, not an introduction, but it was like a welcome greeting. And so it was awesome to see that happen for kids as they got to interact and meet those people that they've known for months now, but have not seen face to face. So that was really cool to see. I know I heard one story about a student who was a little nervous because they didn't know exactly what that person was going to look like, because they had been seeing them without their mask because they're in this format. And so they went through an activity of like, doing a mask. And so what they would expect to see as they greeted one another, again, creative ways to help to establish and nurture that bond between the staff and the students. So I would say that it was a success, and I'm excited to see next week when they return and our first graders come on board as well. So thanks for the question, Sarah.
Wonderful question. Thank you. Any other questions or comments? See none. Thanks, Ryan. And we want to transition now to students' representatives reports. And let's start with College Hill. We have Jesse Martin with us.
Hi, I'm Jesse. Sorry if there's background noise. I hope
all right.
my audio's okay. But as a school with about 150 kids, we never really have much to report, so I'm sorry about that. But we do have this book that our academy class Writing Our World made, and it's basically an anthology book, and it has a bunch of poems from everyone in the class and stories, and it's just, I read through some of them. I wish I had more time to read them, but all of them are pretty long. But you guys were just talking about sustainability. Our green team, our very small green team, is going to be going to try to work with Sustainable Corvallis and the school board, or not you guys, but the school and the city, and try to plant trees on the east side of our building, which would eventually help with shade and heat because our building's pretty old.
Jesse, I believe we lost you, so I'll wait for a little bit, or maybe how about Jesse, we'll wait for you until we get the connection restored and we'll get back to you. Can you hear me, Jesse? Yeah, I think we lost Jesse, so
yeah,
we'll come back to Jesse. And next up is Crescent Valley. We have Kate Waltz, and Calvin Karlsky is unable to join, and we have with us Simon Moulton standing in. So Simon and Kate.
Simone.
Sorry, Simone. I apologize.
That's okay.
Yeah, so Calvin can't be here today because he has a soccer game. I wish their team the best of luck. Before I get into my statement, I just want to say I know Suraj. He does speech and debate, and he is an absolute legend, and he totally deserves all the recognition coming his way. He is amazing and also just a truly kind human being who deserves all the best, and I can't wait to see what he does next. So I'm really glad to hear him getting some recognition. And also, I know Miss Wheeland because she was my science teacher 7th grade and my theater teacher 8th grade, and she is amazing. And I was in green team while I was at Shuttle, so seeing that was awesome, and they're doing a great job. So all of that was awesome to see, and I just had to share my enthusiasm. Okay, going into the stuff that's actually relevant to Crescent Valley. So we had our parent-teacher conferences this Wednesday when we didn't have school, so that was yesterday. Feels like a million years ago, but it was yesterday. And we're also going to have spring break after the end of next week, so we're all looking forward to that. Our fall sports, so football, volleyball, soccer, cross country, cheer, are continuing to practice and have had some games, which are live streamed on various platforms. So go Raiders. And speaking of competitions, Speech and Debate has the national qualifying tournament this weekend, and we'll be preparing for district competitions to qualify for state. And then, of course, CV will be sending cohorts A and B back to school April 12th through the 19th. this is going to be a PSA to my fellow representatives, kind of going off of what Sammy mentioned about legislation. I've heard from a Lake Oswego student rep about connecting people in our positions around the state to advocate for things like Senate Bill 776 and Senate Joint Resolution 25. So I'll get more info to that. Wow, words. I will get more information on that to you guys soon. We will probably be meeting next Wednesday at 5, which is kind of a weird time, but I just wanted to put that out there. We'll hopefully have some intra-state connections coming up soon. And then finally, addressed to everyone, I guess, student government has been working on connection and equity. So we have a mental health committee that's working on support for CV students. We've recently unveiled the student support groups where people can request to be in groups with different people, and there'll be a counselor moderating, and this will be every other week so that people can talk about mental health in a safe space. And also that committee presented to a combined group of CV and CHS online students on mental health at a recent Karen Connect meeting. And we will also be working on a project soon for next year on equity and social justice curriculum. And additionally, Simone and several other people from across the district have been working on a presentation on diversity in hiring. So I'm going to turn it over to her to talk more about it. Simone is one of our junior class presidents, and she's also a great student leader in student government. So I will pass it over to Simone.
Good evening, everybody. My name is Simone Moulton. I'm one of the junior class presidents at Crescent Valley. I, alongside both teachers and students of color across the school district, have been working on a presentation around the importance of a diverse teaching force and how our experiences with diversity or lack of diversity have impacted the Corvallis School District students. These students of color have put vulnerability and honesty into their testimonials and want to share their voices, experiences, and perspectives with you. We made contact in February asking for a spot in the agenda in today's March 11th meeting. Unfortunately, we never received any form of correspondence back. This is important to us, and we want you all to hear our voices. So I am coming in today and asking directly that we are assured a spot in the April 8th meeting agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Simone. And I would definitely connect you with Parker, our secretary, and I'll be in touch with you soon through Parker to make sure that we can have time to discuss the issues. I know the real estate of the issues that we need to discuss is limited, but if there's one thing I learned about school boards is student voice matter, and it should be front and center. So definitely we'll make sure that we have a time to discuss and deliberate and maybe share information. And with that, I'll go next into Corvallis High School. We have Ezra Hart and Kristen Moon.
Ezra couldn't be here tonight, so it's just me. But fall sports have been going well, and we just started our peer mentoring program. It's currently focused on helping freshmen succeed in their distance learning and helping them, or those who are in hybrid, have a smooth transition into in-person instruction. Right now we have over 20 groups that have around 8 freshmen in each. Our student leaders in hybrid also have the chance to be on campus with the freshmen on their first week back to help them find their classes, have some familiar faces, and help them ease into that transition, because it's a big first day kind of week. And that's it for us. Thank you.
Thank you. And I'm going to try to see if we have Jesse still with us, or were you able to return?
Yeah, I'm sorry. My Zoom literally always does that to me whenever I try to talk. I don't know what you guys heard, but the main thing I wanted to get across was that we're going to work with the city and the school to hopefully plant some trees on the east side of our building to block the sunlight, which will help with our heat in the summer, mainly because our school building is pretty old compared to the other ones on in Corvallis. So that will eventually help with our energy use. Yeah.
Wonderful.
But I guess we're also our very small green team is with Sustainable Corvallis soon too, so that's cool. But that's all we have as a small team.
Thank you very much. Does anyone from our board members have a question or comment to our student representatives?
I had a question for Jesse. Did you have a chance to include your poetry or your writing in the anthology?
I wasn't in this rotation, but I was in the first, and we had a similar one, but we didn't call it anthology, but a lot of my friends are, and it's really cool to see their writing, and I can possibly share it with anyone who wants to see it as well.
That would be great. I think that's something where if you wanted to, pick out one or two to share, then we would make sure that that got forwarded onto the board.
Okay, I mean, if you want, I have one that really stood out to me. If we have time right now.
I think so.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, this is a short one, but it's just a point of view of a bike, and I don't know why I liked it so much, but I am a bike stuck in a shed. Nobody to ride me and no place I call bed. But not so often a boy comes to play. Ever so gently he'll tuck me away. More and more as the time flew by, the boy grew up and said goodbye. But as he grew thick and thin, my parts were just too small for him. Through beats and batters and broken parts, he showed me even bikes have hearts. I don't know, I just really liked that.
That's nice.
Thanks.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Jade.
Then can I just ask one more
Sorry,
thing?
yeah.
Simone,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure you're still there. I'm spooling through. So to send that information to us, if you could send it to parker.kang, K-A-N-G.
They changed it. Parker Schultz.
Okay. So sorry, we're going to try it one more time. parker.schulze at corvallis.k12.or.us.
In order to schedule the.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. That's it for me.
Awesome, thanks.
Yeah.
Jay?
Since we're getting into kind of details, Kate, when you talked about speech competitions, it's near and dear to my heart. Could you explain how that national competition relates to the state competition? Are you involved? And do you have to do state to get to national?
Yeah, literally, you do not have to ask me to talk about speech and debate. I will gladly just ramble about it as much as anybody will let me. So basically, nationals and state are actually separate. State is, because there's a lot of events that only happen in Oregon. So like, I'll use myself as an example. My main events are oratory and impromptu. Oratory is national, so all the rules are the same across the nation, but impromptu is only in Oregon. So I can only compete impromptu at the highest levels at the state because that's not a thing at nationals, but I can submit my oratory for nationals. And how that works in remote learning is we just do a one-take video. And so you can submit your one-take video, or we do like impromptu and debate events live. So nationals is one thing, and there's like the South Oregon district for nationals. That's a different thing than the South Oregon district for state, which is very confusing. And I understand why that would be a question about it because it's not very self-explanatory, but they're separate. I'm not entirely sure when nationals is, but I know state is always at the end of April, and we've been able to do speech and debate virtually. So I hope that answered your question.
You did. Thank you and good luck.
Any other questions or comments? All right, I want to reiterate our appreciation for our students representatives. And if you do have any questions or comments during our deliberation of the agenda, please feel free to do so. We appreciate your voice and we rely on it. With that, we'll move to open the public comment period. And I believe we do have Mary Dare with us. Mary Dare, if you're available, could you unmute yourself? Are you with us? No, they've not called. Okay. All right. So we do have one person canceled their public comment testimony, and Mary is not with us right now. For everybody else and for Mary as well, feel free to email the board at board@corvallis. That's OR. That's K. No, for the at corvallis.k12.or.us. And we appreciate your voice. And if you want to sign up for the next public comment period, The instructions are available on Meet the Board page on the Crevalle School Board. So with that, the public comment period is closed. The next item on the agenda is the Superintendent's 2021 evaluation. As an overview, the Crevalle School District's Board of Directors provide an annual evaluation of the superintendent. I would like to entertain a motion to approve the Crevalle School District Board of Directors evaluation of the Superintendent Ryan Noss 2020-21. Director Vince Adams.
So I move to approve the superintendent evaluation as composed by the board chair.
Director Giaconroy.
Second it.
Thank you. It's been moved and seconded. Any deliberation or discussion? And seeing none, and I will allow for comments and maybe comments after the motion as well. Seeing none, I will take a vote. Director Adams, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Baker, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Conroy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Jones, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director White Bear, what's your vote?
Aye.
And the Chair Alatropo votes aye. Passes unanimously. And with that, I'll start reading to the record the evaluation statement. This is the Crevalle School District Board of Directors evaluation of Superintendent Ryan Noss 2020-2021. Superintendent Noss is completing his 5th year as superintendent of the Crevalle School District, navigating the most challenging crisis one could expect in their career. The COVID-19 pandemic impacted schools across the state, nation, and the world. Crevalle schools were no exception, being disrupted by the ongoing public health crisis that disrupted all aspects of our lives. From the start, Superintendent Noss held a long view of the pandemic response, while his eye on strategic priorities. This has allowed the district to remain far ahead of the school reopening window in terms of programmatic preparedness. He has kept his long view of the pandemic response and realizes that even once community spread is contained, the resultant needs of children and families will go on for years. The Crevalle School Board recognizes this year's performance of Superintendent Noss in the strongest terms and with the highest regard and confidence in his leadership. 2020-21 school year priorities. The Crevalle School District achieved its highest 4-year graduation rate of 90% in 2019-2020. Superintendent Noss's tenure has been marked by continued efforts to maintain academic growth for each child. Despite the descent into the global pandemic, the Crevalle School District showed marked improvements in graduation rates. Superintendent Noss continues to work toward meeting student achievements, goals, and closing the opportunity gap during these unprecedented times. While the full extent of the impacts of COVID-19 associated disruptions will remain unknown for years, the district not only showed improvements in the 4-year graduation rates for all students, but also showed growth in the graduation rates of priority student groups. In the past year, 96% of 9th grade students were on track to graduate, and 86% of 9th grade students successfully completing Algebra 1. Over the course of the past 7 years, the graduation rate for Hispanic Latinx students increased from 52% to 88%, and the graduation rate for students navigating poverty increased from 53% to 83%. These gains reflect a foundation that was laid for students over the course of their time with us. The school board continues to support Superintendent Noss in examining the impacts of the pandemic and distance learning on elementary reading levels, and has full confidence in Superintendent Noss and his team's ability to close the achievement gap in the years to come. It is clear that Superintendent Noss holds success for every child as a core value, and he has ensured that equity is a thread in every aspect of district planning and operations. District leaders are supported and feel that they can be they can be bold in creating system changes to create opportunities for all students and staff. There is a sense that the previous several years of equity work in the district is growing into a phase of more adaptive change. Given the extenuating circumstances in the unprecedented times, Superintendent Noss has done an excellent job in navigating equitable systems while staying within regulatory constraints and keeping all our students safe. The pandemic has given him an opportunity to apply his values in equity to unprecedented focused action. He keeps students that need the most support and care at the forefront of decisions. This is evidenced by the distribution of internet hotspots, food, and supplies for families, and the ways in which instruction has been structured. He also thinks about the impacts and experiences of staff in the decisions he makes. The school renaming task force is another example where he has brought an equity lens in enabling community members to feel safe participating and sharing their voice. Superintendent Noss is steadily working on hiring more diverse staff and representative staff that reflect the diversity of our students and community. The board looks forward to supporting Superintendent Noss's work on diversifying the district's workforce across its buildings and programs. The recent support of the region He also thinks about the impacts and experiences of staff in the decisions he makes. The school renaming task force is another example. I think we said that already, right? Yep. Yeah. The recent support of the Regional Racial Equity Initiative and the implementation of Indigenous Peoples Day and Black History Month resolutions demonstrate Superintendent Noss's commitment to an understanding of equity within our schools is directly linked to equity beyond our buildings and policies. Superintendent Noss communicates the district's commitment to equity effectively. Data are always disaggregated and hard questions are asked, most often without a request from the board. Equity and justice are always a thread in communication, both internally and externally. The community and partners know that equity is a core value of the district and seek to engage in this work. Early on, Superintendent Noss recognized that the global pandemic was an opportunity for real-world learning. The district team has been effective in leveraging project-based learning and digital learning to not just mitigate the impact of the pandemic, but to take advantage of the opportunity to expand pathways for student learning. Superintendent Noss emphasizes the importance of real-world learning because of its effectiveness as a teaching modality. Under Superintendent Noss's leadership, the district has made many strategic investments in career and technical learning and project-based learning. He has made great progress in moving Corvallis School District closer to being leaders in CTE and innovative project-based learning education opportunities. He and his leadership team have vigorously worked to create additional success pathways to lead, to create leaders, to lead in careers in the trades. He is clearly enthusiastic about real-world learning and career technical engineering, career technical education. He uses every opportunity to communicate the district progress in the area and actively seeks community partners. We appreciate the commitment to CTE programs, including growing new areas of focus in the high schools and middle schools. CTE gains remain a strong example of success in this area. The district's success in CTE participation is enabling our students to graduate and be engaged in growth opportunities beyond graduation. Investments in programming and infrastructure have been very strategic. The board is pleased to learn that 97% of CTE participants and 98% of CTE concentrators in 2019-2020 graduated on time. We anticipate that Corvallis School District, under the leadership of Superintendent Nas, will empower students to be adaptive, persevering, and engaged in an ever-changing world. Health and wellness have been a focus for Superintendent Nas over the last 2 years, but especially during the global pandemic. He and his team have been scrupulous in planning and preparing for the return of children to in-person instruction. At the same time, the school nurse program is effective in supporting students and guiding the district in health-related decision-making. His leadership in building mental health clinics into the school district has provided Corvallis children an opportunity that few other communities in Oregon have: a mental health provider available for telehealth with access in school. The support of students' whole wellness is evident in decisions being made and the prioritization of resources. The mental health challenges brought by the pandemic are enormous. The role of social workers is supporting students during this time cannot be understated. Having his support and this support infrastructure in place already has helped many find the space, care, and connection they need. Food distribution has also been huge in helping students stay healthy and well. Superintendent Nas's exemplary direction to the district speaks volumes to the type of professional he is. He understands that our children in our district cannot learn or participate at the levels needed to receive academic instruction until their basic human needs are met and well-being is placed at the utmost importance. Right. Superintendent Nas, thank you for your leadership. The Corvallis School District Bond Project is a model program that has not only delivered outstanding value in facilities construction while advancing strategic priorities based on district core values, but has proven to be resilient in the face of health and natural disasters as well. Superintendent Nas has demonstrated exemplary judgment, professionalism, and well-placed trust in integrating the project management team into the district. Bond processes, even when changes are necessary, are invariably well considered and communicated, delivering on all that has been promised in the scope of work. The bond construction project is a highlight in the midst of a challenging year with significant disturbing conditions due to the wildfires and COVID-19 public health crisis. Superintendent Nas has quietly demanded a transparent and prudent facilities planning and construction process. At all times, it is clear that he has student learning and the public interest top of mind. He has empowered a large team of people to think creatively, be inclusive, and work swiftly to meet the needs of and schedule of the bond construction process. Bond construction communications have been exemplary from the launch of the bond campaign to the present. The district makes excellent efforts to engage and bring the community along in our construction work. Fiscal tracking of the bond is transparent, and the Bond Oversight Committee is composed of critical financial thinkers. Problems that arise are quickly and efficiently resolved. The board has every expectation that the bond work will come in or below budget. Today is March 11th. It marks an exact year to date since Superintendent Noss decided to proactively begin suspending events that brought large groups of students, adults, and community members together. His decision was in accordance with the governor's first guidance to minimize potential opportunities for the virus to spread. Since then, Superintendent Noss has remained steady, disciplined, and proactive in his decisions, communication, and actions. In times of crisis, institutions and agencies look for attributes in their leader. The board recognizes the difficulty of maintaining fidelity to a plan while adapting to changing health recommendations and state mandates. Nevertheless, Superintendent Noss looked at the whole picture. He is keeping equity, consistency, and routine as important dimensions in planning and responding to COVID-19. Knowing that consistency matters to the district students, families, and educators, the district team worked with public health authorities to resume in-person instruction when the risk to the students, staff, and community was tolerable. He held steady in his stance that the safety and well-being of all students, staff, and teachers were his top priority. Superintendent Noss has been very effective in relying on his strong leadership and administrative teams while keeping a long view of the pandemic response and keeping his eye on strategic priorities. This has allowed the district to be ready to resume in-person instruction when it was appropriate according to the public health conditions. At every point, when the information was clear and certain, Superintendent Noss and the team have been forthcoming with parents and community. He has been unwavering in his adherence to a deliberate phased re-entry for students and the criteria required to allow that process to begin. The dynamic regulatory environment of the pandemic has forced the district team to repeatedly revise operational plans and execute those challenges. At every step, the district has had the capacity to move swiftly to be compliant and meet the needs of the children. Incorporating teachers into the planning process ensured staff buy-in of programmatic decisions and was effective in building goodwill between the district and labor unions during a very stressful time. The reality of a dramatic shift in a short amount of time, relying on people with varying skill sets and facing their own challenges in this crisis created a dynamic situation. It cannot be understated that the work to develop and redevelop education delivery plans has been Herculean this year. All of the staff working on the many aspects of how we teach our students have shown astounding dedication. Superintendent Noss's every step in planning and executing plans related to the pandemic response has kept students' learning, health, and well-being at the center of all decision-making. He has not allowed himself to be confounded by changes in regulation, information, or political pressures. On behalf of the Corvallis families, the school board expresses its gratitude to have Superintendent Noss leading our district over the last year. His steady leadership and dedication to our students and staff have been invaluable. Superintendent Noss sets an example for other districts. He has been great to work with and collaborative about ensuring we stay committed to the goals put in place. He is open to feedback and is not afraid to be vulnerable. His leadership has been nothing short of phenomenal this year through the disruptions we have experienced during the pandemic, wildfires, and racial justice movements. Dated this 11th day of March 2021, and received this day of 11th day of March 2021.
Thank you. And thanks to the board for all of those kind words and accolades. I always feel fortunate to be part of this community and part of the school district, and recognizing that many of you have kids that come to our schools, and the trust you place in me is of high value and high responsibility, and I really appreciate that. And also the support of this board, working through and supporting all that has happened over the last year, not anticipating the way this year would go, and having a cohesive team that supports the work through policy and through this process and through budgeting our priorities makes a huge difference. So thank you to all of you for the evaluation and our continued work together. Thank you.
Any board members wish to provide a comment or a follow-up? Jay?
I just wanted to say that in light that this will be my fourth year as a board member and my last one because I'm not running again, that I wanted to publicly express my appreciation for Ryan. I have had 30 years in schools. I've had a number of leaders working with me, and I have told people in the community that the secret to board service is to have a really good superintendent, and so you sleep better and life goes easier for board members. That's been the case during my 4 years. Words that come to mind, I have one anecdote. When I was working as a principal, my superintendents asked me every month to get up and come over to their district office. I just want the public to understand that Ryan's style is he gets up and he goes to the buildings. I think that's a gesture and a statement of where the trenches are and where the work is being done. And it's a huge statement of his profile and his just the personality that he brings. Lastly, I would say that words to come to mind when I think of you, Ryan, are trust and integrity and a good listener. And so I thank you for your hard work and appreciate working with you for 4 years. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jay. And it's funny, I was thinking about that just the other day, how, in year 5, having a board member who comes on and is able to stay with for a whole term and then comes off the board. That's sort of one of those things you and I have together, and that sort of a unique experience that way for me, just in, year 5 as a superintendent. And so I was just thinking about how sort of that's been unique in this role so far, and also to have somebody who has the background in education as a teacher, principal, and now supporting student teachers. And so I do think that unique view that you bring and perspective is really has been helpful, and I really appreciate it. And I'll say more about you when we get closer to June, but as of now, those were my thoughts just the other day.
Lou?
I had something to say, and I was listening to Jay and Ryan talk so much. I'm like, what was I going to say? But I just wanted to echo everything that's been said already and say thank you to Ryan. Like, this has been a lot for all of us to go through together as a community. And I think that having a strong leader in the community to help navigate all these unknowns and things that are out of our control, to have something tangible to to orbit around, I guess I can say it that way, has been really much appreciated. So I just wanted to share that with the community too, that kind of appreciation, because there's a lot we can't control, and the things we can, you've done such an incredible job with. And I remember the other part. See, I talked long enough where I remembered exactly what I was actually going to say. I was just going to reflect really quickly. Like last year at this time, I was like, how do I evaluate Ryan? We just met, and like I've barely been working with you. And so I'm really thankful to be able to provide to participate in evaluation with a full year of experience with you, and just have been reflected a lot when helping with this process of all the things that have happened. So yeah.
Thank you. And thanks for your continued focus on making sure that we're thinking about all of our kids.
Vince?
So I know that we have a meeting to get to, so I want to keep my comments short, but I think the hallmark here is trust. And I'll share with you what I've said in the past, and that's, not only as a board member who has known you since before you were superintendent, I've just really appreciated how you've grown into this position, but I think you have really been exemplary this year. And you'll notice that in the statement from the board, there was a lot of your team embedded in that. And I think that that's because you have built a really strong, cohesive team that works well together. That's not just the district office, that's also our educators, and bringing all those forces together to do so much good for our kids this year has really been truly phenomenal. And that's why that word is in here. I just want to, on behalf of the community and as a dad in the community, I want to say thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I think what you said is so accurate, because it's really the work of the team. I'm just the superintendent with the evaluation, right? But it's the team overall. Everything from the decision to go with Wenaha as a smaller project management team and taking on this large project, how would that go, to everybody who has continued to adjust and pivot again and again this year, from one set of expectations to the next, one set of rules to the next. It has been quite a year for everybody, and I think that at the end of the day, I think that we will be stronger coming out of this than we were going into it.
Yeah. Sarah?
Yeah, I just want to echo my colleagues' appreciation for your work. I think especially as a parent with kids in the district, I have felt sometimes like I'm kind of in a privileged position, because I, as a board member, know a little bit more about the workings and whys of what's going on. And it's been very striking during this time that we have a leader in our superintendent and a team in our district that worked very hard with our kids' best interest at heart to keep the schools going during a pandemic. And I'm just really grateful that we had a team and a superintendent that we, again, I'm going to say trust, and could rely on during this really uncertain time. So thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
I want to mention something important. While folks might have heard my voice reading those words, they are the words of the 7 board members. And if there is a unified voice that would be in one sentence, it's really the values that Jay mentioned: trusting and knowing that you listen, and confidence in your leadership. Exactly a year ago, I remember our phone conversations, anticipating that kids are today, March 11th was the last day we tell them, see you next week, but we did not see them in person next week. And it's the same day the WHO announced the pandemic, and folks in Oregon started realizing this is going to be serious. It will disrupt life for us, maybe for a week, maybe for a month, maybe more. And I saw how you pivoted and how you showed the perseverance of your staff and the district to make sure that we can deliver on our promise to keep our kids safe and educate them. It's hard. At times of confusion, we need someone who not only provides certainty, but also is vulnerable to say, we don't know what we don't know, but we can manage what we know and what we can control. And this has been really important and critical to the road ahead. As we start a new year, I have exactly the same trust and even stronger trust that the school district will be better than last year and even better than before we entered the pandemic. We have created systems and created infrastructure and grown a lot. And hopefully that will make sure that we can deliver on our promise and close the equity gap in all fronts, health and education and everything. And with that, thank you.
Thank you.
Sarah, you have a comment? All right. With that, we'll transition to the bond project update, and we have Dale and Kim with us. Welcome, Dale and Kim. And do we have a report, our presentation?
Tonight, it is not a PowerPoint presentation. It was the written monthly board report. I hope you folks had a chance to read that, and I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Wonderful, thank you. Any questions to Dale?
I'd like to add one comment on Superintendent Noss. We appreciate greatly at the bond program his availability to us to help make those quick decisions that need to be made. And we meet weekly and ad hoc as needed. And I know it's a big chunk out of his week, but it's super important. So thank you for that.
Thanks, Dale.
Right, board members. There is any, we do have two hands and I'm trying to see who is it. It's Lou and then Vince.
This is just a quick comment, Dale, of the excitement of little kids and seeing that Lincoln going up. I'm sure my child's not the only one. She came running and was like, Mom, there's walls. And literally jumping up and down. So I just wanted you to know the excitement that is continuing to provide. So just
that is fantastic. Thank you for sharing.
All right, and then we have Vince.
Yeah, I just have a question. Are we going to be addressing the Jaguar and Wildcat GMP approval tonight?
Yes.
I hope it's
next.
Okay, then I'll wait.
All right. Any other questions or comments on the report, Cerise?
It's a question not specifically about the report, but Director Whitebear's comment reminded me that, we live across very close to Garfield. So we've been watching the progress on that building. And so my son asked me if the inside of the building was really going to be accessible when school reopens. And so I said, I don't know, but I know people who do, so I will ask. So just very quickly, can you tell me, what will the kids at Garfield, what should they expect to see? And in terms of what it will be like to be in that space and moving around?
Sure. You mean this spring, I assume, right?
Like on March 29th.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The construction team and the administrations work really hard together to make sure that the areas are separate, where there's active construction and where there's not. There are heavy duty construction fences to keep the children on the playground from entering into the zone of the new addition. And same in the building. There's plywood doors with locks that keep children from going into an active construction zone. And we're doing our best to make sure that access is very tightly controlled. We had a tour last Friday with some foundation folks and others, and we walked them through the remodeled West Wing, and the reaction was as expected. Is they feel a lot like new spaces, so we're excited for the kids to return to see those new rooms. they feel really nice. So I think the kids will be excited. They'll get to experience the new student restroom model, which is also fantastic. So a lot of fun things to see there.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Just clarification about the seismic and HVAC in Shelderland scheduled to next spring. Are we talking about spring 2022?
That is correct.
And I understand that would be in terms of being flexible and providing an opportunity to resume in-person instruction as soon as possible when that's allowed. Is that right?
Certainly, yeah. That had a big part of it.
Wonderful. Awesome. Seeing there's no further comments or questions, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, and we'll keep you there to deal with us for the GMP, for the Jaguar and Wildcat GMP. And it's for action. So, board members, is there any questions or a motion? Jay. Jay, you're muted. We can't hear you.
I'm sorry. I move to authorize staff to execute the guaranteed maximum price amendments with Fortis Construction for the addition and renovation at Jaguar Elementary for $12,484,267, establishing a full guaranteed maximum price of $13,273,796, and at Wildcat Elementary for $11,941,792, establishing a full guaranteed maximum price there of $12,718,843, and to approve the allocation of bond reserves in the amount of $5,077,809 for Jaguar Elementary and $5,036,133 for Wildcat Elementary to fully fund the projects.
Adams seconds.
Been moved and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none, we'll go for a vote. Vice Chair Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Jones?
Aye.
Director White Bear?
Aye.
Director Adams?
Aye.
Director Baker?
Aye.
Director Conroy?
Aye.
Chair Adrobo votes aye. Passes unanimously. Thank you very much.
Thank you, folks.
Absolutely. And I believe there was a question from Vince, or you're good?
No, I'm good.
Okay, good. Perfect. Awesome. With that, really appreciate it, Dale. And we'll move on to the next item on the agenda, educational updates with Ryan.
All right. So Assistant Superintendent Harder and I were going to provide you with an educational update. This has been sort of a staple this year as a part of our meetings, just to provide an additional update about our transition and our movement towards responding to COVID. So if Parker could pull up the slides, and we will work our way through. Again, this is an opportunity for us just to provide you with an update about where we are in our progression and next steps, and to answer questions that you have. So we, as you know, we have an operational blueprint for reentry. One of the things that we wanted to highlight for you tonight was just some information about our transitioning students back into the classroom, and some of the ideas, some of the guidance, some of the processes and procedures we have in place, both around learning and also around health. So as you know, right now we are still following Ready School Safe Learners, which, as you know, contains 160 rules that we follow. We are anticipating, based on the letter sent out by Governor Brown, at the end of last week that there will be some additional revisions to the Ready School Safe Learner guidance. And in that letter to Director Gill and to OHA, there was a request to have those updates by March 19th. And so we anticipate seeing new information, new guidance, new direction, or modifications at least coming out next week. So we'll keep the board apprised and the community apprised about what that means for us. Go ahead and head to the next slide. So this is just a reminder about where we are in our phasing. Again, recognizing that our kinder started this week. Thank you to Sarah for asking the question about how that had gone. Just again, a chance to highlight our district office staff have been out at schools providing support during that transition time every day, and we'll continue to do that as more and more of our students return to the classrooms. One of the things that is important to note is that we have made a change based on the letter from Governor Brown. We have not yet seen the executive order, but recognizing that staff would need to make some modifications for next week in terms of preparation, we are planning to bring our second, third, fourth, and fifth graders back at the same time, starting March 29th, which was a modification information that we shared with families yesterday for our fourth and fifth grade families, and also all of our families today in our community update. With that, our other stages and phases are going to continue with those same dates. Again, recognizing that we've worked with our associations around some guidance and a collective bargaining and a memorandum of understanding, we felt like it was important to maintain that integrity of that document and that agreement in every other aspect, other than recognizing that there were the changes that came to us through that governor's order. Next slide.
Okay.
Oh, go, Melissa. I can't see you. So
it's okay. I wanted to go back to that slide and just highlight the 6th and 9th grade transition week. Sarah brought this up a while ago when we were talking about bringing our kids back and what that would look like for 6th and 9th graders who'd never been in the building before. And that week that's just for them is our commitment to making sure that that transition is smooth for them. You've already heard from one of our student reps talking about what that first week will look like with students coming back to help the 9th graders as they're moving around the building. And all of our schools are also doing a lot of other planning to prepare for and get our kids excited about being in the new building. So just wanted to highlight that too.
I've shifted my view, so now I can see you as well.
Okay.
So, sorry about that.
Okay.
So one of the questions that I've had recently has been about air circulation. And so we have gone through, our facilities team has gone through and looked at all of the classroom spaces and has assessed the way that air is circulating, spaces where there's air intake directly from outdoors, classrooms that have windows that can be opened. We do have some classrooms that are internal without windows. And so in those places, we've added filtration systems with our HEPA filters. And we've also have sharing out those reports with each school. And so if there's a faculty member or there's a space where there is a concern, we have additional filters available. So again, we're really focusing on the quality of air and air movement. One of the things that I think is important for families to know is that our schools may feel a little bit more chilly than usual early in the morning because we are pulling as much air as possible from outdoors. And so that does impact the temperature, but we're also really focusing on air movement. Anything you'd like to add, Melissa?
Nope, that's perfect.
Right.
I'll take the next one though.
Good.
When it comes up. So this is the COVID-19 dashboard that we have now posted on our website. We waited until we were bringing students back on site, a larger number of students back on site, so that we could protect confidentiality when we had students in limited in person. We have had students and staff who have come up positive for COVID, but even during limited in person, I'm really happy to report that we haven't had any in-school transmissions. So what we're seeing now is a COVID-19 dashboard that is going to take into account only when students are in the building, and only those buildings that are phased in and where students are attending. So with this dashboard, you're looking at the elementary schools and current cases of COVID-19 in elementary schools now that we have our kindergartners back in. As we start phasing in our middle schools and high schools, then you'll see those NAs go away, and we intend to keep this as updated as possible. We have an eye on this, and I also want to just one more thing, sorry, just to highlight and shout out to our district nurses who are working above and beyond right now. We have a COVID response team. We have nurses who are actively in conversation with Benton County Health. They're calling parents, they're calling staff. They are learning everything there is to know about all of the rules that are in RISL and all of the things that we need to consider when we're wanting families and staff to stay safe. So I want to honor that because their work has been really hard and they're doing a great job.
So again, as we think about resumption, these are those 4 areas that we've talked about before, but to just continue to highlight as we think about kids coming back, and we think about even students support over the summer. As you probably saw last week, there was a grant that's coming from the Department of Education focusing on summer programs. And it's so for us, when we think about that, we're thinking about student and family connection. We're just continuing to think about mental health continuity and service as we move through, even through the summer and into the fall, academic support and credit recovery, and also empowering our students through internships and career preparation. So these 4 areas you'll continue to see from us, and we'll continue to report out on as we move through the spring, through the summer, and into the fall. And again, there's money and support that's coming from the state and the federal government, and also support from our foundation, which is again a great partner in this work. We will have a work session with the foundation coming up later this spring. We did one this fall. We'll do one again this spring. And so as we have the opportunity to talk with them, I just want you to kind of have these 4 areas in mind, because they will, as they've been thinking about supporting our work this summer. Okay, next slide.
So our Ready School Safe Learners and operational blueprint guidance says that we are going to not allow visitors into the building. So our schools are open for students, but they are closed for visitors. And we're going to continue to use the same model that we've been using throughout the school year, with the doorbell and calling and making appointments if you need to come in to see an office staff member. We have made one small change with clubs and extracurricular activities. We understand how important those are to our students, and it's not just at high school, it's all 3 levels. So what we have decided is that our clubs and extracurricular activities can operate as long as they have an administrator approval and a club advisor who is a CSD employee, because there's, a CSD certified staff member, because there's things that need to happen to keep our kids safe, including contact tracing in those groups and doing the entry screening kind of process like we do when kids come into the building. So we've laid some of that groundwork with our administrators and our office managers so that they can get ready for clubs and extracurricular activities. Graduation is coming and information from ODE is coming. They're hoping to give that to us. Is it next week, or is it going to be, I heard it was next week. Yeah.
We're hoping for next week. And at this point, the guidance is really focused on indoor and outdoor entertainment. You have probably seen that as an area that's related, that ties back to county rates. So moving us out of extreme into high, that has an impact on what we're able to do around graduation. I think we'll have information coming out again before the break, and we want to get some more information to families as soon as possible. And so there's a work group that's been meeting, made up of high school administrators, leadership teachers, those folks that help to coordinate graduations. And we've been talking about what that can look like for this spring. So stay tuned for that information. So a couple of other key dates just to have in mind. Kindergarten registration will begin April 19th. We have postponed that student transfer window. We've done that. Sort of one of the challenges this year is that we oftentimes come back after winter break and we begin to plan for the upcoming school year. This year, we've continued to modify and plan for iterations in what we're providing for this school year. And so there are some things that need to happen prior to those transfer windows being opened. Looking at the calendar for next year and recognizing that you'll have a meeting July 1st where you work to identify board leadership. We will probably come at that meeting with requests for openings school by school, by grade level and by number, which is something that we've done the last couple of years. And then again, the first day of school is September 8th. And we have our school calendar for next year up on our website. So if people are trying to look for those key dates now, that's available. You adopted that calendar last year. And so that has allowed us to have that information out and made available. All right, that's it for tonight. So if you have questions for us, we would be happy to answer them.
We have Vince.
So Ryan, I know you have been receiving a lot of feedback from the community, and so is the board on instruction hours and the apportionment of core instruction and where that's at. And can you take a moment to just go back and go over the thought process and how the decisions were made to just lay that out and why we laid out instruction the way we did in the schedule for hybrid?
Sure. Yeah, sure. And then Melissa, if there's anything you want to add, feel free. So there were a number of decisions that have been made related to the current schedule. The first one is just sort of that first intentional decision was really focused on how many kids could we have in the building at one time. And so that decision led us to having to meet 2 cohorts because of the rule around 35 square feet per student. And so recognizing that, we knew we needed to have a cohort A and a cohort B. The other thing that we know is that we will have kids that are not able to return for in-person learning for a myriad of reasons, from living with a elderly parent or caregiver to having health concerns myself, or health concerns for the student, to I don't feel safe yet returning my students to school. That's one of the things that we're going to continue to communicate out. That's why that dashboard is so important. So parents can see that information and community can see that information. And so we, under the guidance even that Governor Brown put out on Friday, that in that executive order, there will still be the expectations that we're providing instruction for those students as well, because we're responsible for providing students instruction to all of our kids. And so having that in mind, one of the other things we know is that from our surveys that we've done, that we anticipate that there's probably close to 1,200 students in that group who won't be returning at this time. And so we made some decisions about core instruction being made available for everyone. And to do that, we looked at that synchronous learning time as a way to provide that, and also recognizing the desire to get kids back into the school. And so the balance between having that synchronous learning for all students, those that are able to return and those that aren't, as well as recognizing the intention and need to have students back in school, those were all considerations. The other big consideration for us has been transportation. We know that it will take an hour per level for getting kids to school and getting kids home from school. So that's 6 hours if you think about elementary, middle, and high, of dropping kids off at school, and another 3 hours of picking up and taking kids home. So transportation is also a big factor in the way we've built our schedules. And then there were some intentional decisions made level by level. One of the things that we talked about at middle school was really focused on as much time as possible for that in person, and recognizing we still had that need for providing that synchronous learning. So that's why that chunk in the morning is focused for middle school age students. At the high school, one of the things that I think we'll see happen is that the instructional time will be primarily that synchronous time, and recognizing when kids are coming into the building to continue to do practice. One of the other questions that I get a lot is about the social emotional component as well as the academic component. And I think that people have read or heard that it's really just focused on that social emotional component, which is really important, but you can't do that without some sort of activities that are also enhancing academics. I think about things from even our youngest learners. So rhyme has components of phonemic awareness built into it, which is a skill that kids need to be readers. So all the way through, I think that there's ways that those two things are going to interlock and mesh. And so it's not one or the other, it's a combination of the two. So that is really the thinking that has come through our work with our teachers and our association to build a schedule that accounts for all of those variables and factors. And I think that one of the things that is also a challenge is that we are 198 school districts all working to create a plan for students to return to school without necessarily a clear framework of how that should look. And so we're all doing it a little bit differently, which causes sometimes comparison from district to district and community to community. And out of that, sometimes we're focused on the best aspect of each one, and why can't we do it exactly like that? But at the same time, there's an intentionality about the big picture of how that's rolled out.
Perfect. That's exactly what I was looking for. And I would just underscore that the plan that you've developed and the thinking that you just shared with the community really was a product of all the smartest people in the room. It was done with with our district leadership staff and with our teachers at the table, working really hard, and ideas coming from both sides with an emphasis on giving the best instruction we can for all our kids. And one thing I really appreciate is that cohort C is that is not true across the state, that not every school district is meeting the need of all their kids. Some are not allowing kids that can't come back to school. They're out of luck. And so I knew that I'm glad that it was a deal breaker for you that we had to serve all our kids. So thanks for that explanation.
Yeah, the one thing I'd add to what you just shared was the component of our classified staff in that conversation as well. And their focus has been on that health and safety component, recognizing that those are the folks that have been making sure that our buildings have been clean and will stay clean, to making sure that those kids who have individual one-on-one support, that relationship is intact and there's plans and processes in place. One of the things about the professional development that's happening for teachers the week prior to their grade level coming back is that they're going through sort of a day in the life of the student to think about what are the processes and procedures that we now have in place and are thinking about related to health and safety.
One of the other things, thoughts that have coming up from those conversations also is the message that we got from teachers that they feel like they've kind of got this distance learning thing kind of figured out here, and that learning, while we know it's not perfect, learning is happening. And so, I guess that's another question, a follow-up question is, what assurance can you give parents that are really concerned about that academic component? Because we've been hearing a lot about that right now.
I think one of the other intentional decisions around that is that one of the things that we learned in the spring was that by having days of instruction and days that were asynchronous, that wasn't always the best option for kids. And so having continuity across days, rather than one day I'm in school with my teacher and the next day I'm working independently, and then the next day I'm with my teacher and then the next day I'm working independently, we felt our experience was that there was more learning loss in that model. than the continuity, even if it's portions of the day, but it was more days in the week.
Right. Thanks for all that explanation. I really appreciate it.
Next up is Sarah and then Lou. Sarah?
Yeah, one of the questions I keep getting, and I've asked this question before, but I think we need to keep saying it, is about the portable classrooms and assurance that the air quality in those will be good also. So just, what have we done? I mean, it sounds like you've gone into everyone and looked at them, but what have we done to make sure that those, especially some of those old ones, are going to be safe places for our kids and our teachers to be?
Melissa, do you want to take that one?
We've purchased a pile of air purifiers for so a lot of those, if it's not about windows, if we can't do the airflow and make sure that we're having those air exchanges in order to bring in clean air, then we have air purifiers, and those have been placed in those classrooms that our facilities staff have deemed that it's needed. So we have air purifiers, and maybe one of those modular classrooms that you're referring to, that might be the case, and you'll see an air purifier in that room.
Thank you.
Lou?
Yeah, I just had a couple of questions. Just what the support, I know I asked about this often, the support back looks like for students that are transitioning back after being out of school for a year. For that, it's a huge transition. Even those couple of days I know are in those hours in person are going to really positively impact students, but it's also like a big jump also when you're been out for so long. And I was just kind of wondering what kind of supports are in place, and if there's I know that we have like limitations on like staffing right now and everything, but if there's enough social workers to help with that support too across the district, or if that's in the talks at all. I have another question too after that.
Do you want to start that one, Melissa, and then I'll add to it?
I was going to start with elementary, and what we've seen since we've started comprehensive distance learning is that there's always 2 staff in the virtual room, and that's going to transition into on-site. There'll always be 2 staff in the physical classroom. So the classroom teacher and what we're calling inclusion assistants to ensure that all those students are taken care of when they're in the classroom. And Ryan's already alluded to the fact that the kids were super excited to see the same people when they walked in the door, the kindergartners were this week, that they've seen online. So that's going to be a huge help. Also, in addition to that, our district behavior coach has been going to every single building, having meetings with their leadership team and their student support teams to talk about how we ensure that that behavior challenges that we're facing, that we're being first proactive and appropriately trauma informed, responsive to the needs of our students, and how to make sure that happens. Our teachers are very concerned about how our kids are going to be coming back, and they know that they need help and they're asking for that. And so we're working really hard to make sure that we're giving them that information before the kids walk in the door, so they're ready for that challenge. Ryan, do you have more?
I think that you really covered those things that I was thinking about. It's
okay.
While we have had, while we do have staffing limitations, we've really been intentional about how we are using our staff. And then I think the other piece has been, goes back to something we've talked about before, but having those mental health team members has allowed our school counselors to also really be school counselors. And I think it has just created better structures for us over time than we would have had coming out of this if we hadn't made that investment 2 years ago.
Great, yeah, thank you. I thought about that too. Like, I'm so glad that it's already been in place to have that support for the kids, because it is going to be a big jump. But I'm really happy for the students that are going to be able to be back and have the experiences they need. And you started talking about next year and talked about some credit recovery stuff. And we don't have to talk about it right now, but if we can at some point, I've brought this up a couple of times, of course, about like structural things of supporting students, like if there's any structural changes in education that you know of that have been discussed, like more broadly past beyond our district? And I know there's been some work locally as well. But I'm just wondering because right now I feel like the model is that it's up to the individual students to be able to recover. And I know the district is doing everything they can to help with that. But at some point, we don't have to answer it right now unless you have some initial thoughts on any of that besides the summer credit recovery.
One of the things I would share right now is just that as we look at greater investment coming to us from the federal government as of today, one of the pieces for us will be thinking about how do we utilize those resources and how do we do that in such a way that accounts for that question really at several different levels. So yeah, I think that there's more to come on that.
All right, sorry, go ahead, Lou. Do you have one more question?
I was just saying thank you to Melissa and Ryan.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Let's go with one more question from Jay, and then we need to transition to the homelessness students reports. Jay, you're up next.
So assuming for just a second on that, this is a terrible challenge. Can you give us a quick answer on how is our staff immunization in terms of how many could you say are able to be immunized? And then assume for a minute that the governor's standards might loosen and we would be able to put more kids in classrooms for those last 9 weeks or quarter of the year. Are we thinking about that possibility, or is that going to be too tough to juggle one more time to maybe open up even more? What do you think?
So the first question, my answer is that we have been able to move our staff through that process of having both shots. We haven't had Johnson & Johnson, so it's been moving through both shots, and we have close to 90% of our staff that wanted to take part in that. So a pretty strong number. And it was a really successful process, I think, with support from Samaritan. So we have moved through that process smoothly and well. To your second question, so one of the things that we have worked through has been a memorandum of understanding with our associations, recognizing the health and safety component and bringing kids back to school. If there's significant changes that we see coming, then we would need to move through that process again. So that is one consideration that would need to be accounted for. One of the other things that I've been asked a couple of times is about when is like timelines, thinking about where we are in the school year and all of those things. I know that it's been a difficult year and a challenging year, and we've continued to pivot, but that may mean we need to pivot one more time.
Thank you.
Yeah. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ryan. I said Jay will go last, but I want to make sure there's an opportunity for our students or representatives. If anyone wants to ask a question or comment, feel free to raise the virtual hand on the platform because I won't be able to see you directly. So is there any question from our students representatives? And while I wait for that, I want to say thank you, Ryan, for the continued and persistent effort to make sure that the community is aware of the decisions. If I would say something, I would refer to the evaluation to say how confident we are in these plans. Not in these plans, in you making the plans, and in the plans that they will work. And when they don't, we will adapt and change course accordingly. So really thank you for the communication. I know there's so many FAQs from the community members. Some of them the board is receiving. I appreciate you responding to those when they're operational and detailed. That's what's very important.
Yeah, thanks.
Awesome. With that, let's move to the next report, an agenda item, which is the homelessness students report. As a reminder for board members, we received this report in an earlier meeting, and we couldn't have that time to discuss or ask questions about it. And I understand that Amy is available here to answer any questions as well. I want to start with appreciating the work there. It's alarming to know the challenges that our homeless students and families are going through. And I hope that we can provide every possible resource. And I know and acknowledge that the district is doing its best at it. It takes a community. With that, Kate, do you have a question or comment on the report?
Oh, no, I was just going to say, I know that like student reps might want to leave, so I just wanted to put that out there because we have school tomorrow. It's not spring break yet.
Yes, absolutely. So yes, as a reminder for our student representatives, you're off the hook if you want to leave. If you want to stick around, you're more than welcome. But it's 8:12, and as Kate mentioned, if you want to go sleep or do homework or something else, feel free to do so. Thank you, Kate, for the reminder.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great night.
Have a good night. All right. With that, actually, I want to ask you, Amy, do you have any comments or points you want to share first?
I just want to also introduce Sarah Devine. I think she's been here with you maybe last year when we gave our report, but Sarah's here and she's our McKinney-Vento homeless liaison and responsible for a large portion of that report along with a few other people. So we are both here to answer any questions. I think we did a pretty thorough job of sharing the data that we had. So we are open for any questions.
Thank you and welcome, Sarah. Welcome back. Sarah Finger-McDowd, you're up next.
Yeah, first I just want to express my gratitude for the speed of the response and the creativity and partnership building that happened a year ago to put supports into place for our kids and our family. I know a year ago I was lying awake at night wondering what we were going to do for kids and families when we closed school for a couple weeks. And it's now been a year, and having our district step up and really provide resources that were, invented at a moment's notice was impressive and critical. I was interested in the report that in your first sort of set of data from March to August, you were serving more families than you were in September. And so I was wondering, do we know what happened to those families? And do we expect to find more of them as we start reopening school buildings? It just seems sort of striking that when school started again in September, we were serving fewer families, or was the community stepping in then and doing some of that work?
Yeah, so I would say yes. I think when everything sort of closed down to in-person in March, a lot of our other community resources like food banks had to also close temporarily, and we didn't. And that was kind of a unique piece in the ways that we were supporting. And a large part of how we operate as a team supporting families, like we know that we don't work in a vacuum. So we are also, as much as we are, directing our district resources to families, we're also working to connect them to where those resources exist in the community. And the landscape of what that looked like in September was really different than what it looked like in March.
Thank you, Vince, and then Lou.
So thank you a lot for the report. It's very disquieting information. My concern is looking forward towards summer, where we've been struggling. Clearly in the data, it shows that we're struggling to detect these families and get supports on them. As we get towards June 30th, I mean, the eviction moratorium is going to be lifted, and we can expect that in the first months of the summer that we're going to see a rash of increased homelessness. And I'm concerned about sufficient resources for your team to meet those needs. Are we going to be able to detect them? And what advocacy, what can this body do to support the work that you're doing?
Thanks, Vince. I think one key thing to note is that we have done some intentional budgeting to make sure that we are able to continue staffing our welcome centers, we call it, throughout the summer. One thing we're talking about is checking in with families in June before they're gone from us and get kind of a regular list, like no matter what, this family is going to continue to get their food box the entire summer. And then, you know, our navigators work all summer. And so they're a constant connection. And even though Sarah has time off in the summer, she still attends many of the meetings and is part of the community and has maybe a few hours when I, you know, push her out the door and make her take a vacation, but we are still very connected. And I think the just the nature of being a family liaison doesn't fully allow you to disconnect in the summer. And if you read the part of what's keeping us awake at night, the eviction piece is huge. And it is definitely something that we are all just watching real close and have a lot of concerns about. Sarah, is there anything you want to add?
Yeah, another kind of piece of that is that we know this is coming unless it changes again. This is the third moratorium that we've had where they almost ran out and it was very stressful, and then they passed one at the last minute. So I will also just put the caveat of there's a lot of unknowns. And because we have this end date, we are very intentionally looking ahead many months to see which families do we anticipate are in that position where come July 1st, they are in dire straits and facing an eviction. And we're working really hard to connect them with the resources that do exist now. There's a new wave of funding for rent assistance, and we are doing our best to make sure that we actually have less of a crisis come July 1st, because we have all of these months to be supporting families, trying to identify new families that we didn't even know were facing these issues, and trying to put that legwork in between now and June. So just that piece as well.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Lou?
Hi, Amy and Sarah. I have like a couple of questions, and in case you didn't know, I am very into like reading data, kind of just heads up on this, but I did have a comment too, and really wanted to appreciate how much time was invested in the application assistance part that was mentioned in the report, and getting the food and supplies to folk, just because of like knowing transportation needs, and like I'm still a little bit baffled with how many actual signatures are needed right now with like the lack of access to printers and stuff like that. So just wanted to appreciate those kind of details that were put into supporting families. I have one question about representation numbers of where College Hill students are housed in the data sets, if they're spread across CHS and CV. Is that where they're at?
Yeah, that's where they live.
Okay, I was just kind of curious about that, because I think like the number may look a little bit different if, yeah, and I didn't know why they weren't pulled out, since they're pulled out in so many of our other data sets.
Yeah, and that's actually something I've spoken with Lori, who helps with all of these data pieces. She pulls everything out of our SIS system, which only has Corvallis High and CV, so it's a little challenging. That's actually a piece, though, that I personally would love to see as well, and I think that's definitely something we could work on, because I think you're right, it tells a little bit of a different story.
I think so too, thank you. And the data dip on where the graph is pretty concerning, as already mentioned, because we know that the problem did not just suddenly go away, it's worse than, and so we all know that's concerning. I have a question about if there's been any analysis of the intersections of poverty and race, in like understanding how that may show up in our numbers a little bit more, like a little bit more detailed, like with the disaggregated data, because even without disaggregated data, there is such a huge overrepresentation. If you have 8.6% of Black students in the community and only representing 1.4% of the population, that's a huge overrepresentation. And I've done some work with the Hope board this past year on like education about some of the implications with the impacts of homelessness on Black and Indigenous community members in the county. And just knowing that those numbers are really overrepresented, like those are the two groups in the county that are overrepresented in the homeless population and houseless population. And you see it reflected a little bit in here, but if you look at that multiracial group, you know, a lot of those students are in there. And so I don't feel like we have the best representation, just like all the data sets really, of knowing how we can connect to some other resources that may be able to help families out, like reaching out to the tribes and reaching out to other community organizations that are really specific. If they're pushed into another data set, then we may not be able to connect them with those resources. So I was just wondering if there's a little bit of that analysis that's going on, and also with the queer youth, with the homelessness population, with that intersection of being part of the LGBTQ plus community. That's not really reflected in this data set, and just knowing from other community partners like at Jackson Street and other areas that that is an area of concern, and I'm wondering if that might show up in future reports. And I only have one more question after that.
Thank you. I think an important update that maybe Ryan and Melissa can talk about bringing next month is shifting how we collect race and ethnicity data, and expanding our categories. We have a team working really hard with LBL right now to change how we collect that data and to expand on exactly what you were saying. Like we will be able to, I think, have a better picture once we are able to have once we collect that differently in the beginning. And then I suppose the same thing about our LGBTQ data. It's not a data set that we have ready access to. And so what does that look like? We have some anecdotal data, but it is not quantifiable right now. And at the same time, I'm confident that the people who are working closely with our kiddos could give you some stories and information that would verify exactly what you're saying. And one of the key things that I think Sarah does and the team does is connect with the community. Like, we can't do it all, and there are people out there who really have resources and are able to connect with different populations in our town and in our community better or differently than we can, and we cannot lose sight of how important that is. And so I would just say yes, and we can always do better connecting more, and we realize how critically important it is. I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad that that's going to happen, because I think it's hard to like really grasp the full picture of what's going on with the students until we have those cross analysis kind of conversations, and really dig in a little bit more. That way we can have a better starting point with helping out families in the community that are part of the district. And the last thing you all talked about, like supporting legislation. I don't know if there's specific ones in the report that you know of that are going on right now that folk can be aware of that can help address some of these, some of the needs. And that was it. So thank you so much for answering all my 500 questions.
I believe I just saw a legislation update recently, and there are a few about homelessness and then also about eviction that are coming up in our state legislature, and we can get you some of that information, like ones that are really impacting education. We can get you that information.
Yeah, thank you. Really appreciate that. Sarah and Vince, do you have your hands up from before, or do you have further questions?
I have another question.
Yes, go for it.
So in the report, you mentioned the training for elementary staff on poverty-informed practices and remote learning. Can you discuss that? I'm just curious about what was embedded in that training. What did it look like?
Yeah.
Sarah.
So we, my coworker Annie Bittner and I designed. She's a family advocate at 2 of our elementaries. We designed a training kind of based around a documentary called Growing Up Poor in America, I think. Followed some families through the start of the pandemic and schools closing, and just all of the kind of, it painted a really good picture of the challenges that families were facing. The type of poverty looked a little bit different. It wasn't based like in Oregon or in our community. And then we kind of took that into a process of almost like building empathy, making sure that we were kind of seeing the full picture of what families were experiencing at home and what that looked like, and really thinking about, as educators, as a school system, what are the ways that we can be really conscious of kind of all of these challenges that are challenges upon challenges upon challenges, especially for our most vulnerable students, and what does that look like as we move forward, knowing that distance learning is a reality for at least a while longer.
That's really,
we did it virtually, so I don't see any reason why that's not also something I could give to Parker that could they could send out to you all, just because you could do it on your own time. It's a virtual presentation that's professional learning, so I can add that to my list of things to share out with you.
I would really appreciate that, and I'm sure my colleagues would as well. So, I mean, did you have any debrief? Was there any evaluation on what the impact of the program was? What are the key learnings that came out of that, or the aha moments?
Yeah, we did ask every participant to fill out just a really brief kind of reflection at the end, and then we collected all of those responses in a spreadsheet, which was really illuminating to kind of look through. And I would say the responses that I saw most commonly were, kind of things like, it's a good reminder that, these students are in my class, I'm sure, and it's really hard to hear and sit with the realities that these students and families are facing. And where we want more tools, we want more resources, we want more ways to support them. I would say we heard a lot of that. Great.
And so I guess my follow-up was, this sounds really, really good, really important. It sounds a lot like I used to work at OSU. We used to do poverty simulations akin to that. Those were like half-day things, but and they had a lot of impact. I'm just curious. I would just say I would advocate for all staff to have this experience. Yeah. So thanks very much. And thanks for the great report and the work that you do. Crucially important.
I want to just summarize really the request from board members speak to me really well, making sure that we're updated on any legislative work, and we could do advocacy action in our spare time. So feel free to inundate us with the Senate bills or House bills as they come in, and hopefully that will inform us to communicate with our representatives, and also keeping us updated about the situation as it grows, and what more resources you're doing and giving, and the connections you're creating, and also what we're learning. The advocacy parts of the school board, I think it's our responsibility to step up. And as you mentioned, the eviction moratorium scares me. On my way here, I found this envelope in front of my door as I was getting out of the house with a 5% increase notification on July 1st, the day where the moratorium expires. And that scares me, but it will be a nightmare for those who already did not pay some monies that they owe, and that money is not going to go away. They still need to pay it. So summer will be really grim, and without the support and the help that we can offer, it will be even worse. So thank you for the work. Thank you for your hard work, Sarah and Amy, and everybody who's doing this work. And we got to do everything we can to care for our students and their families.
Yeah, but one of the things I would like to add is just, appreciation for Sarah and Annie and the work that they've been doing, day in and day out since this pandemic started. One of the things I had wondered about early on was this by enhancing what we did in our Welcome Center, was it something that was going to be at some point another organization or agency would sort of take on, and then we would sort of pass that and then still continue to partner with great people like Sarah and Annie, but then not necessarily have that be part of the capacity of what we're doing. What I think now is that really what we saw was probably there was an unmet need that existed before the pandemic, and now we're providing resources that are going to need to be continued long term. And so I think about it differently than I did at the beginning, and I think it's just important for us to kind of have that in mind moving forward, because I think that we're able to do things in different ways, relationally and through access through things like transportation and some of those pieces that are hard for some of our families. And so I think we're providing sort of a need that's been there, and we know that it's going to continue to be there, and we're just going to need to continue to do this work.
Yeah, indeed. All right, with that, we'll move for, I have a question to the board and staff. Would you like a 5 minutes break or power through? And continue. All right, I see a 5 minutes break request. So how about we recess, stand at ease for 5 minutes, and we'll be back at 8:36. Okay, thank you, Amy and Sarah. Appreciate it.
did you say we were coming back?
About now. Yeah.
Sorry, I wasn't sure when to pull it up. I couldn't remember.
Yeah, we'll be returning shortly.
But it says we're live.
All right. We're back in session, and next item on the agenda is the scholarship committee presentation. And I understand there was an update and from Lou and Jay and Vince, the committee or the group that's worked on the scholarship. So Lou and Jay and Vince and Ryan, would you like to share an update with us?
Yeah. So the scholarship committee has been able to meet a couple more times, and we have established criteria for the scholarship. You'll recall that this year we'll be dispersing $5,000 in scholarships to students, and you can go back and look at the description for the scholarship. None of that has changed. One of the things that came up for this the committee, though, was that we started getting into the details of actually how to administer the scholarship, and realized that there was some detail there that was going to be a little daunting for the board. And I'm going to, attribute Jay Conroy with a great idea. Why don't we reach out to the Corvallis Public Schools Foundation? Why don't you hold on a second while I close my door? Kids going to bed can be noisy. So anyway, so we did that. Jay went ahead and reached out to Leif Gifford at the Public Schools Foundation and their scholarship, grants and scholarships committee. They considered it, and they have agreed to potentially administer the scholarship for the board if that is what the will of the board is. The details on that arrangement would be that there would be a 5% administrative fee. So, for just handling the fiduciary aspects of the scholarship. At least one board member would be able to participate in the review of applications, and that review would happen on May 10th from noon to 1:30. And so that's the report. That's where we're at this point. I guess the question that the committee has for the board is whether working with the Public Schools Foundation would be advantageous and make it easier. And I guess I'll also hand it back to my fellow committee members if I missed anything.
Jay?
I would just add that our hearts were in the right spot, but if we goof up in terms of not doing this in the right way, we could be causing ourselves more problems. And those include things like doing a good job of reviewing and also setting the parameters. And the foundation and Lead do this kind of work a lot. And so with great respect, Lou has had some background, I have not, and I don't know about Vince, but we just decided that might be the best and most wise way to do our delegating of the scholarship. So I strongly recommend we do that.
I'm reminded of one of the other things that came up in our discussions for review of applications. If the whole board were to participate and we were going to deliberate over those, if we were going to meet, we would have to meet in a public session, and that would have us discussing the applications of students, and that just didn't sit right with committee members. That was, I think, one of the big reasons that we reached out to the foundation. Lou, did I miss anything? Is there anything you can add?
No, I was just going to say a little bit about that too. If there was a way for us all to read it, that would be amazing, like through the online portals. But the way that the foundation has it set up is a little bit different than that. And so it does limit how many people can actually be present for those screening times. But I think it's a great opportunity as well, just having administered scholarships for over a decade for like a tribal government. I know like the ins and outs of the administration part of it can be a little bit tricky, having to set something up, and especially because this is like a short term, it's not something we would set up for forever and ever kind of thing. So it's great that they already have the setup. They have the mechanism, the application itself. That way students' information is stored somewhere securely as well. So that's another confidentiality thing to keep in mind. And I was like, oh yeah, we would have to be in public. That would not be good to be discussing people's personal information, especially with everything that's in it. But I think that they have all of the things that were presented to the rest of the board before are able to be just put into that application process. And we came up with like a little bit of a way to how those would be gauged and stuff too. So yeah.
Well, see, Jay, you want to add something? Are you good? Okay. So with that, board members, any thoughts, discussion, comments, feelings? I'll start with mine. I really think it's a great idea, and it's even a better way to show the partnership with the foundation. And 5% administrative fee may seem something that someone will pause with, but with the foundation, I think they gave us way more than the 5% and how much they support us. So I think it's still worth it. Sarah?
Yeah, I have been on scholarship committees for years, and it is not always an easy process. It's definitely not a process we would want to discuss records in public. My only question would be, will we have a way to, I don't know if we would do it through schools or how to make sure that students who are qualified and deserving will know about the scholarship and apply. One of the issues with some of the scholarships that I've worked with is that we have money and getting students to apply is sometimes hard. So I don't know how we could do something to make sure that students are really encouraged to apply and they know about the opportunity, so that we're reaching the kids who we want to give money to.
Yeah.
Great question. I don't have an answer to that. But
I mean, it is going to be on the same page as the other scholarships, but I think it would be up to us to like send a ask out to counselors and be like, can you please let students know, let them know that this is like a unique scholarship opportunity, and that some students that may be interested in it may not be on their radar to even look at that application. So I think that's just going to be something we're going to strategically want to do once it's on their page, and send a link over to the counselors with a nudge to encourage students to apply.
Yeah,
I think you've already started off in that way by including Aaron, McKee, and Matt, and Eric, right? And just like looking at what the language was initially that you put out. So I think that's just one way of making that investment.
Do you feel, in addition to this work, also in communication, do you feel the board could do outside communication with community partners who might have interaction with parents and families? Would that be helpful as well?
Yeah, I would think so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So maybe as soon as we have the website page, we can do our own recruitment spiel, but definitely we need to reach the kids where they are and make sure that they know about it, and acknowledge that traditional means of communication are not always going to reach everybody. So really appreciate the partnership. All right, so I get this from the board. Do we feel okay with the recommendations and the direction of the committee? I see head nods. Any objections? All right.
Great.
I want to, yes, go ahead.
So the committee will go ahead and proceed with starting to that relationship with the Public Schools Foundation, and we will report back on the status of progress at our next meeting.
Wonderful, wonderful, good. This is good. And I want to acknowledge that we do have some board members who have video conferencing difficulties because of the internet. So I see thumbs up from them as well. So with that, thank you, Jay and Vince and Lou on working on this, and looking forward for the steps forward. Sarah, further comments? All right. So seeing none, let's move on to the consolidated action. And we do have licensed personnel action, including annual contracts renewal and budget parameters readoption. As anyone wishes to pull out an agenda item? And I would start with the budget parameters for myself and consult with Lou as well. Anyone else? All right, with that, let's start with budget parameters. If I can ask Parker to share a language, and I want to thank Olivia and Ryan for presenting us the budget parameters as we adopted it previously, which was just the parameters without the preamble. And there is a language that Lou provided as a modification that will be presented for your review. Parker, did we send it to them over email, or can we put it on the screen?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's put it on the screen. And as a review for folks who are watching, this is related to the budget parameters that sets the direction and parameters of how we develop our budgets. And this is the preamble. Lou, do you want to speak to it, or maybe share a brief about what you changed or differentiated?
Sure. I was about to just highlight the area, then I was like, I can't because it's not my screen being shared. I got into teaching mode, but it's basically the same thing, except for it's based on our previous conversation about the role of or just acknowledging that emotions do come up in any decision that's made, and in taking that language out while keeping the integrity of what's meant, of understanding that these decisions have long-term impacts and consequences. And so those pieces are still in there, but it's just slightly tweaked. The sentence itself that was changed says they set forth the ideals that the district's decision makers will adhere to as they develop the budget, through an understanding that these decisions have long-term consequences. And so that's the sentence that was changed for consideration. And just so that way there's parameters in understanding like why these are, or there, this is why these are parameters are in place, is because of these reasons that are stated in the preamble. So instead of not having a preamble, just modifying the preamble so it still has the intent behind it.
Thank you, Lou. Any questions, comments, concerns, or agreement?
So I want to clarify my understanding. Are you seeking a motion to approve with this amendment?
As a matter of fact, actually, I would say, how about we take a straw poll? If everybody is comfortable with this, the consolidated action will approve the parameters as presented for readoption. And next meeting, we'll have this embedded in the document. So we'll have it for readoption with these changes in the next meeting.
Great, then I support the addition.
Thank you. And thanks, Vince, for the clarification. Any other concerns, questions? All right, seeing none, we'll take that into consideration for the next meeting to be included in the consolidated action with the budget parameters. And now in the consolidated action, we'll be approving the parameters as presented. With that, I would like to entertain a motion regarding the consolidated action.
So I just want to confirm that we're just doing what this is, just the licensed personnel in consolidated action. Is that my understanding?
Yeah, technically, whether we approve this or not, I think it's the same language we approved last time. Am I right? So.
Yeah, I think it doesn't really matter because you're going to bring it back and approve the new language.
Yeah. So to clarify, the answer is yes and yes. We're approving licensed personnel And the budget parameters presented for readoption as in the packet is the same that we adopted a month ago or previously.
All right, then I move to approve consolidated action.
Any second?
Second.
Any further discussion?
Yes, I do have discussion.
Yes.
So in the licensed personnel action, we are seeing some notable educators leaving our organization and some that have touched me personally and shaped who I am and how I think about education and leadership. I just want, Anna Gomez, who is a teacher at Linus Pauling Middle School. She was a colleague of mine at Oregon State University and is an exemplary human being, a great educator, and has been an inspiration to me in my work professionally. Paul Navarra, I remember numerous very great conversations, particularly at our SIP meetings, where Paul was very comfortable sharing the truth of what's going on at CHS, and it's really helped me as a board member. I want to call out Anna Marie Gosser at Husky. She's going to be leaving us. She's been just a great administrator. I used to be the liaison to Husky back in the day, and it just has been a pleasure watching her grow as a professional and learning from her work in that school. And then Colleen works at CHS, is at the end of her career and has just been a tremendous educator and has been really inspiring to me in the way that she works with the students at CHS. So I just wanted to call out those educators. I'd also like to call out that we're renewing the contracts on our district leaders and principals. This is not a trivial thing. These folks work hard for us and have done great work, particularly this year. And then, of course, we have a whole bunch of renewals for our teachers as well. So this is actually, while it's embedded in consolidated action, it's an important milestone in the year for the board.
Yep, absolutely. Jay?
I just wanted to echo Vince's comments, and we could be here a long time thinking of names, but the one that jumps out at me in this group is Colleen Works. I have one quick story. Colleen and I did social studies curriculum work. I was the high school government teacher and she was the middle school social studies teacher. And we argued about whether 8th graders could learn the Constitution. And I was just not convinced they understood search and seizure, and she could do it. And her passion for kids just then carried forward. I know she jumped into the high school and she's a strong leader and teacher there. So I appreciate her and all those others who've given so much of their time. So thank you to all of them.
Thank you. Much gratitude for our educators. They're doing tremendous work, and the community owes it to you for your hard work. And yeah, so with that, any further comments? All right, we have a motion on the floor, and see there's no further comments. We'll take a vote. Director Adams, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Conroy, what's your vote?
Aye.
Vice Chair Finger McDonald, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Jones, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director Baker, what's your vote?
Aye.
Director White Bear, what's your vote?
Aye.
And Chair Adrobo votes aye. Passes unanimously. And let's see what's next. We have consolidated information. Any items you want to pull out from consolidated information? Lou, and then Jay. Lou?
Jay was first. It might be the same thing. Is it BFJ?
Oh, no, it isn't. I'm sorry. It's
Oh,
mine is just please go ahead.
Okay, BF.
BF. And Jay, what about you?
I just wanted to take a minute to acknowledge two people who I personally knew. So whenever that's appropriate.
All right. And then Vince?
I want to acknowledge some people, and then I want to talk about financials. I think we're pulling all of consolidated information out.
Looks like it. All right, let's start with acknowledgements. Jay,
Even to the Corvallis board.
I was going to give you the time that I stole from you for last meeting that went for 6 hours, but all right, Jay.
I just want to note that the retirements of Debbie Bell and Sharon Gibson, two people who I would tell you personality, if you don't know them, they are both very kind and caring and they do their work with just a real supportive attitude. I know Debbie in the business world and Sharon in the food service world, and I just came to really appreciate them for their heart and their hard work. So, and I wish them a great retirement.
Vince?
Likewise, Jay, the same two people, and my reflection on them is almost identical. I remember early on in my board service that when I walked into the district office, Debbie Bell was always there and smiling and greeted me. She knew who I was, and she was happy that I was there. And she's just always been a bright point in the district office. And then Sharon Gibson has just been inspiring and bringing the creativity and dedication to her job, even when things have been tough and food service was not getting a lot of kudos from the community. She leaned in and worked hard in that space and just is a dedicated and kind person. And so just, wanted to recognize the retirement of these two individuals. And, people in the district, you impact us, I guess, is the message that we're trying to share.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you. All right, let's go next for BF, and then we'll go for the financials. So policy BF, it's the policy developments, and this is for our first read. I think Lou, you brought up first. So Ryan, do you want to have any comments first about it, or?
I don't think necessarily. I think really this was trying to incorporate the information that was shared by board members after that first review of the policy. Again, we took the boilerplate policy from OSBA and wanted to include additional information there based on the conversation from the board. So I think we've tried to do that, and if that's not the case, or if there's additional modifications, we're welcome and open to it.
Okay. Lou?
Okay, you ready, Melissa? I was just curious about what ORS 332.505 and ORS 339.240, how they inform this policy, because one of them, the 505, has to do with personnel policies, and the other one has to do with rules of conduct. And it seemed like very interesting that they were in here and not other policies that we would potentially be interacting with. And so it's more a point of curiosity of how those two ORSs inform this policy in particular. The other one totally makes sense, but these two, I was just really didn't understand. Sort of like before when I asked about these, it's either a broken link, or I'm curious to why or how they inform it, because the how I think is really important for us to know as board members if we're citing laws. And then the other one, I think we actually had an email about the one of the highlighted one that's in the middle, and I was just bringing, and this was a while back, and apologize for not because we get so many emails. But the terminology about basic responsibility, if there's clarification of what that means, as far as basic, is it like delivering it to the board when it comes to light? So that's kind of the only actual question about the text I have. And it was something I had written down a while back, so I don't remember exactly who brought it up initially, but I made a note of it. And so let's just bring it up. Thanks.
So I remember that question coming up. And so as I was thinking about it, I think the scenario that was given is if you had a superintendent who didn't bring or refused to bring the policy forward. And again, I don't have it right in front of me, so I'm going from memory. So I may be wrong about the refusal piece, but like a reluctance perhaps. And so there was a question about what, if that was the case for the superintendent, how would that influence and impact policy development?
Yeah, I think that was the premise of it too. And so I was wondering if like basic responsibility could be a little bit more specific of just to help answer that question, or to help clarify for the public too, of like what that means. I mean, I have an idea what basic responsibility means. Like I would imagine you're the one who would be putting it all together and bringing it to the board. But I think that if it's a little bit like spelled out, that might help clarify.
And I thought about it in a totally different way. I thought about it in terms of the responsibility that that you're a group of 7 and you're happen to be my evaluation tonight. But generally speaking, you evaluate, you hire, you fire the superintendent. And so I thought about it in terms of the how that would go down pragmatically. If there was refusal on my part to bring policy forward, and where that would actually rest, it would rest in my evaluation and my continued employment. So that's how I thought about it. So I didn't necessarily think that it needed a different, more language. It was kind of clear to me about the consequences of that. But that being said, if you feel like there's additional language that would better clarify that, I'm totally open to it. But I just wanted to share from my perspective how I thought about it.
That totally makes sense, Ryan. And I don't necessarily think it needs to change. It was just like something I remember being brought up, and I had it written down from when we talked about it, and just wanted to make sure it was really clear and documented, like what's meant, even if it's in the minutes, that there's that understanding. That doesn't necessarily mean we have to change it, but yeah.
But there's a responsibility on the part of the superintendent.
Mm-hmm. I think the way I interpret it, I'm pushing this to the extreme examples. That's how we test a policy is language, is the basic responsibility day in, day out. We would expect our superintendent to present those policies to us and that reflect the need, the systemic need, and we would approve them or discuss them. Maybe basic, what basic means to me as I read it is the board still have the right to override. So let's say if you get several board members who say, we want this policy, and in this extreme example you mentioned, the superintendent is reluctant. So there's 2 ways of accountability: and override, where the board will present that to the agenda and we'll work on it, or in the evaluation as well. But that's not the usual. It's not the basic. And contrary to that extreme example, the basic responsibility is what we've been doing for the last 4 years. Does that make sense, or is that how I read?
No, I mean that would still be your prerogative. You and I work in conjunction to set the agenda for these meetings, and you would have the ability to put policy on the agenda.
Yeah, and that's where. Yeah, I don't know. Like maybe. Yeah, I think it makes sense to me, but I don't know. How do you feel, Lou? Like we're okay to approve it as is with this understanding?
And Jane and Vince both have their hands up.
Oh, I'm sorry. Trying to look. Okay, let's go.
I just spooled and then I saw the.
So
Vince.
I have some language that might solve this problem. And so if you'll indulge me. So I would consider revising the sentence to read, the responsibility for the routine initiation, review, and recommendation of new policies or policy modification will rest with the superintendent. And the reason that I came up with this language is because I thought about what our practice is. And our practice is that those routine policies, that the updates that we get after every legislative cycle and, minor adjustments, that does rest with the district staff and with the superintendent. And that's how they come to the board. That doesn't preclude the superintendent from initiating a transformational policy. It just states that the maintenance of our routine policy process would rest with the superintendent. Does that capture the intent?
Can you read that one more time, please?
The responsibility for the routine initiation, review, and recommendation of new policies or policy modification will rest with the superintendent.
Yeah, I think so.
I like it.
So instead of basic, I use the term routine.
Yeah.
That's how I interpreted basic too, Vince, is that it's just the process that we go through where we pull that down from OSBA and we go through and we make those adjustments.
Yeah.
I'm going to find the answers to your questions, Lou, and I'll make sure and send those out on the ORS.
And I'm sending this text to you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Jay?
I agree with Vince. I wonder, and we're talking about people who read this getting confused, if you added one more word in the now first sentence that says new policies or changes in existing policies may also be proposed. So you just change those sentences and you talk, a person reading it for the first time would go, oh no, wait, what's the board's job? And also might clarify that this is in addition to what's been stated about the superintendent. I think we're stumbling over the fact that we don't read about it very often, and then we go, wait a minute, who's in charge? And the answer is, we both are, sort of.
Could you clarify which paragraph you're referring to?
The sentence says, new policies or changes in existing policy may be proposed. That's the sentence that I said you might want to add also. So you say, new policies or changes in existing policy may also be proposed by, and that would fit really well if it was the second sentence. That's wordsmithing, and I would not die on that one, but just a hopeful to help people understand what is it that we're doing in this policy.
Okay. Lou?
I just want to say thank you for like helping make it clear for the public, like what we mean, because just because we understand exactly what it means doesn't mean it's always like super clear, and I think it's helpful, even if it's like just a slight tweak that helps clarify, and knowing what the intent is. Like I said before, I totally know what it is, what you're talking about, and what we intend it to be, but sometimes it's not as clear.
All right. I see previous hands up. Vince and Jay, we're good.
Sorry, I'm good.
All right. Any further discussion on the policy of policy? All right. Good discussion. And the next item on the agenda for discussion is financials, December and January financials. I might have a couple of questions as well, but Vince, if you want to go first.
So financials, it's not about the substance. It's I'm just curious why we transitioned to getting individual transactions in the financials.
Mm-hmm.
I was a little shocked when I opened the December financials and it was 70 some pages long. I was like, oh my goodness, what did I get?
You just got information straight out of our financial system database. We usually have staff that compile that report for the board, and it requires some scrubbing and compilation. And I needed to pull the report for you in time to get it on the agenda. So I did what I could do, which is essentially information straight out of the system anyway, which I actually would prefer that staff not have to manually massage information for the board report. And so it's something we'll continue to work on to find a better solution in the long term.
So my feedback is I don't want it to take extra time for staff to massage a report for the board either. So I think if there's software that can roll that information up, great. But until then, keep sending me all those transactions and I can sift through them. But yeah, typically I wouldn't want that level of detail, but yeah, we don't want to waste staff time either.
Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Well, Vince, you just reminded me that I shouldn't go to the weeds, so I'm not going to ask about controller refurbishments and IP changes for Mattel sheets. What was that about? Even though I'm really curious to know. But my question that I think is appropriate for a board level is the other one, which is regarding capital improvements fund resources. And I can't pinpoint the page right now, but my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, and the capital improvement fund resources, we budgeted for an amount and we actually have actuals, increased revenue more than what we budgeted for. My interpretation is because we had grades rating and we got more when we sold the bond, the second phase of the bond. Is that correct? And could you explain more why we got more revenue than what we budgeted for?
That is correct. And so in the December financials, the financial statement for the capital projects fund, which is page number 12 of the December financial packet, local sources would be representative of interest earnings. And so we budgeted $1 million of interest earnings. We've received 1.5 million through the end of December. So yes, we're receiving more interest earnings than what we budgeted. And for the other financing sources, that represents the bond premium. We budgeted just shy of 40 million and have received 50.4 million. And so the other financing sources, the bond premium line, that won't look any different through the end of the year. There won't be any more activity in that account, but the interest earnings will continue to accumulate as this only represents the first half of the fiscal year.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Lou?
I was like getting this big packet. I just wanted to say thank you to Olivia and other staff that usually compile this down. I just wanted to express a moment of appreciation because it's a lot of information to shift through, and I hope that we're able to find a way to make that a little smoother for y'all.
Thank you, Lou. Jay?
Just have a question. I remember when we all kind of gave Judy Ball a bad time about digging through some of these. And I'd like to ask Vince if he could give us a, excuse me, a note about what is our duty as a board member to be into these. And I'm, you know, I'm happy to maybe pass that along to the next group of people that are board members. But if we have an obligation to be into it, we need to get whatever detail we're supposed to get into. So.
How to read the financials?
No. To what level of finance? I guess I thought we were getting more detail.
So I will tell you a story about the school board when I first got on it. It used to be a time-honored tradition that the board would go into the transactions, the expenditures report, so individual things, and ask questions about ones that seemed large and that we didn't know what they were. And while it was not done in a nitpicking way. It was just out of curiosity. And I have to say, in that exercise, I learned a lot about the district and its operations. I remember expenditures for things like the fly rig at the CHS Theater. You know, we didn't know what it was. We didn't know what the company was, and it was an expenditure for like, I don't know, $10,000. It was a lot. It was a lot. And it was just really interesting. So it's things like that I think digging into that, if there's an expenditure that you're curious about, I guarantee you that Olivia knows exactly what she's spending the money on, and you can learn a lot from what the district is spending on. So at this point, I'm fairly familiar with most of the things, so I don't pull anything out anymore.
I'm just more asking about if you were giving a seminar to board members, what is our fiduciary duty as a board member, to what level of scrutiny? And I don't mean to take too much time, but that was just my question.
I think board members need to look at what the expenditures are of the district and get familiar with them, and then look for anything that would be anomalous, and that we would be acting in our oversight capacity in doing that.
Thanks.
Yeah, one thing I would add, and actually I learned it from Vince, a practice I do is to read the actuals from the budgets, and let's say we are halfway through the year, you would expect it more or less to be 50%. If not, it's not necessarily a red flag, but it's a question mark. Maybe there was a budgeted expenditure at the beginning of the year. There's nothing that you're going to expend at the end of the year. But if it is a trend and you're expecting that you will be over budget, that's where you want to ask, are we actually going to be over budget? Of course, it's not only the percentage of expenditures over actuals, it's are we on a trend to go over budget? And honestly, I never saw that as an issue or a problem for us for the district, but that would be another question mark. Vince, do you think that's appropriate, or do you want to maybe correct me with what I said?
That is totally appropriate. So that's something I always look at, and Olivia does a really good job of laying that out for us. The rate at which revenues are coming in and where we were the previous year and sometimes the year prior to that. And then also how fast are we spending out the budget, and are we on pace? The other thing to look at is ending fund balance and the projection for the ending fund balance. And Olivia always includes that as well. So there's lots of important, it's really just, she's giving us a bellwether of where we're heading and making sure that we're on glide path to end with a balanced budget at the end of the year.
Yeah. Awesome.
And
Any more
Olivia, you're the expert in this space, so please chime in.
Yes.
I think in response to Jay's inquiry, in my experience, the level of detail of information reviewed by the board on a regular basis varies significantly across districts. In some cases, and in the past experience I've had, the school board didn't review like transaction level data. In some districts, the board reviews the check register for the entire month. And so it could be, one end of the spectrum to another or something in between. The cash disbursement detail that's provided to the board on a monthly basis has been the same since I've been here, in that the board receives information for any disbursement that's equal to or greater than $1,000. Just as like a food for thought, and in the future, that's a pretty low amount. I personally don't approve any purchase orders or requisitions that are below $2,500. We have a workflow within the district, and for things to come to me for approval, they have to meet a certain amount. And so even at the $1,000 level, it's a pretty low level of detail. For procurement and purchasing regulations, the threshold for us to even enter into competitive procurement, where we, solicit, at least more than one quote, is a $10,000 limit. And so it might be something to consider for the future in terms of the minimum level of disbursement that the board wants to review. And it would obviously, minimize the number of transactions that you're looking at, but it's just something that you can consider. It's been that way since I've been here, and we haven't really talked about modifying any of the components of the financial statements. The investment report that you receive monthly is required in the board policy on investments, and the financial statements are also noted in our fiscal policy. So the disbursements report is not necessarily indicated anywhere in any board policy. So it's kind of just an informal process that we've been following.
Wonderful. Thank you, Olivia. Really appreciate it. Any more comments or questions? Yeah, really appreciate it, Olivia. And since people are watching, I want to just acknowledge how amazing the work that we do and award-winning our budgets are. They're good to read, and they are very, very well organized, and we've been awarded awards on the good work of it. Vince?
It just sounds like there's a training opportunity here for the board to learn about school finance and maybe get a little look under the hood when we have some time, and maybe a topic for our retreat, and we can learn from our finance director.
Absolutely, and I'll check in offline with Ryan as well. Probably we could do it with refreshers or training with the budget committee, whether this year or maybe later on. So I'll make sure offline we have a plan for that. Thanks for the suggestion, Vince. Good, so that gets us into the last item before the adjournment, which is board member comments. Do we have any comments or future agenda items for consideration? With the understanding for future agenda items, it probably will be budgeted for next year. We have really heavy agenda. Therese?
Thanks, Sammy. So in the course of some work that I do with, well, it doesn't really matter. Anyway, I have been learning more about how high school completion programs work for students that don't graduate in 4 years. And I would like to learn a little bit more about how our district came to kind of form its policies around how it will provide services for post 4-year seniors, students in general. I'm particularly trying to understand a little bit more about the variations across districts around what happens when kids reach the age of not being able to be served by the public schools. So I'm curious about how our district approaches that. Are we serving until we are not legally allowed to serve? Do we have an earlier cutoff than that? How did we make that decision? The literature that I've come across so far is pretty clear that students that complete a high school diploma, even if they complete it late, tend to fare better in terms of wages later in life than students that opt for a GED. I'm a big proponent of the GED, and I think it's a very rigorous test. And so it's not about, I don't think that this phenomena happens because the actual education that people are receiving. I think it happens probably related to perceptions and a combination of additional barriers that might be directing a person toward a GED in the first place. So anyway, I'd like to understand a little bit more about how our district has come to its process of serving those students. And so that's something I'd like to hear, I guess, a report out on. No doubt when we get that report out, I'll have probably some questions about that.
Perfect. Do you want to talk a little bit about it, maybe fifth year program as well?
Actually, I think it would be something that I'd actually rather have Eric Wright come and talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, just about sort of because he helps with, he's responsible for College Hill, but he also provides support in a couple of other avenues as well. So maybe I think that would be something that would be worthwhile. So I'd rather just have him come and speak if that's okay.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, Therese. And probably related or not, the fifth year program is going to sunset at the end of this year. And Senator Gelser will reach out to learn about how our district is doing it. So maybe if there's a need for advocacy about it, if you're interested, you and other board members, we can connect offline about how to connect with Senator Gelser to advocate for continuing the fifth year program and other post 4 years program interventions.
Yes, I would very much like to continue that conversation.
Sounds good. Jay and then Lou.
I wasn't quite sure what your comment meant when our agendas are full and where my two requests for kind of cleanup measures on our own policies would stand. Are we still going to get those in before May?
Yes, you bet. So actually one of them, I think we're going to present it embedded in the calendar. So I'll briefly mention the election of officers. It's just we're not gonna schedule elections of officers throughout the May or June meeting. And we will have a schedule proposed for the board with the July 1st meeting. And that will include the election of officers on the first day of the new cycle. That being said, I would say, yes, we will discuss it within the framework of the calendar, but that seems the most practical way of the elections of officers. And the other one, if you could remind me which one was it?
I know that one, and I'm working with OSBA on that one, Jay, about the extension of time between first and second read of a policy or resolution.
Thank you.
It will come before the end of the year.
My only other comment is it's a statement of appreciation. It's hard work we do when we do evaluations and exchange thoughts about evaluation. They're hard. So I just appreciate the tone and the thoughtfulness of our session. Appreciate you guys very much.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, sort of appreciation for Sammy, recognizing the amount, and you actually the whole board, but just the amount of work that went into putting that whole document together. I know that it took time and intention. That was obvious. And so thank you for the work in doing that.
Yeah. Well, thanks, team. And I leaned a lot on the board. Last night I had a couple phone calls checking in for language with Sarah and Vince. So thank you for the help. Really, the board did huge work on the evaluation, and I enjoyed working on it. All right, so Jay and then Lou. Lou?
This is a little ways out, but I'm wondering if it can be on sometime agenda. Maybe, I don't know if it'll be in this board year or another one, but I'm curious about thoughts on the ethnic studies bill that got passed in and how that's fitting into the long-term plans of curriculum, since I think it's this spring that the standards are getting reviewed. And it's just a couple more years out that it'll be part of curriculum. And so I'm just kind of curious, just knowing what the priorities and commitments to equity and anti-racism in the district. I'm kind of curious where we're at on that, I guess. We don't have to have any updates, of course, on the spot, but it's just been on my mind, and some opportunities that may be coming up through the local ethnic studies programs with the local universities and stuff like that. And so just wanting to know where it is on the radar is all at some point. Yeah.
Sounds good. Yeah, and that's something that I think having Amy and Nikki come and help to talk about, and Marcianne actually, I think that would be another an important conversation.
Thanks. And also wanted to thank you again, Ryan, and the team for helping get the kids back in as soon as we could. And glad that this week was a good start, and looking forward to more kids having good starts in the coming weeks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Good. Anyone else? I want to invite every one of you to join the Caucus of Color, either as a board, as a member, if you self-identify as a Black, Indigenous, or person of color, or as a friend of the caucus, which is open for all OSBA school board members. There is really important work happening, and I'm really proud to be working with Lou and our colleagues across the state. There's legislative advocacy, professional development, and just learning from our colleagues across the state on the work that they're doing has been phenomenal. I'll be sharing with you a letter that the officers of the caucus and myself sent to OSAA related to the implementation and the creation of rules that were negatively impacting students, athletes, and other districts. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask to reach out. But I signed off on that letter in that capacity, and it included really some disturbing news about how our students, Black students, are impacted by some rules. So I look forward to continue that discussion with OSAA, and they seem to be receptive and actively working on making sure that our students are safe, but also their culture and identity is being respected. The other thing I want to say, today is really a somber day to remember. March 11th is the day everybody recognized life is not going to be the same, at least for maybe a few weeks, month, or year. But also our Japanese community is remembering the 10-year anniversary of the Fukushima disaster, and it disturbed lives and killed lives because of the tsunami, or disturbed lives because of the nuclear reactor. And the way I'm reflecting on both disasters, the pandemic and the other nuclear disaster, they said about that one, it was not a natural disaster, it was man-made, air quotes, which means they were preventable and the harm could have been reduced. And in our backyard, we have actually a nuclear technology that is Fukushima safe. So it would not repeat the mistakes of the past. It relies on gravity to save people. The same way I'm thinking, the education system that we're building right now, I hope will be mitigating the effects of a future pandemic if this would happen again, and probably it will happen. So I'm just reflecting on the severity of this day for us as an institution and people, how much learning we got and how much better we will be to save ourselves and our kids from the hardships and the struggles that we went through last year, whether it was loss of lives or loss of jobs or loss of learning. And really much appreciation for everything Ryan and his team is doing to really build that institutional learning for us as a community and as the educational system at large. And I'm sure there are some learnings from Corvallis that will be shared across districts and might be the standard of how we do things. So thank you for being bold and for inventing and for giving me hope that the future will be better than the past.
Absolutely. Thanks.
All right. Well, with that, we are adjourned. If there's any more comments, thank you. Good night.